At Google right now, like 50% of their new code is just being written by artificial intelligence.
Which is a huge number.
Right. But instead of, celebrating this massive efficiency leap, there are over 600 engineers who are actively rebelling against the very tools that are supposed to be building their future.
Yeah, it's incredibly messy over there right now.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are basically opening Google's black box here in the year 2026 to see what actually happens when the creators of AI mandate its use across an entire workforce of 180,000 people.
And we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources for this one.
Yeah, we have leaked internal reports to Business Insider, actual data presented directly at Google I/O 2026, and some really incisive tech coverage from platforms like Infobay and Entrepreneur en Español.
So our mission today is to uncover the very specific internal AI ecosystem that Google has built just for its own employees.
Exactly. And we're looking at a highly specific ecosystem here, right? It consists of 10 distinct tools.
10 of them, yeah. And the real value here for you, the listener, is that we're looking past all that polished corporate marketing.
Oh, totally. We want the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right. By analyzing the incredible efficiency gains right alongside the, very real friction at a tech giant, we can extract practical lessons you can actually apply to your own organization's workflow.
Because most of us don't have a trillion-dollar market cap, right?
Exactly. But you could still learn from their playbook.
So to understand the architecture of this whole overhaul, we really have to start where Google started, which is the code itself.
Yeah, the foundation.
The sources point to this massive shift in the engineering department, and it's driven primarily by a tool called Gemini Code Assist.
Right, and that really does serve as the foundation. I mean, Gemini Code Assist isn't just some third-party app or, an optional browser plugin.
It's baked right in.
Baked right into their standard development environment, exactly. And the data shows that 50% of Google's new code is now AI-assisted.
Which is just a massive trajectory shift. I mean, they jumped from what, like 30% to 50% in just a few months?
Yeah, a matter of months. It's a profound shift in how human capital is being deployed.
And looking at the broader industry context, Google is clearly reacting to market pressure here.
Oh, absolutely. They aren't doing this in a vacuum.
Right. The reports note that Meta has publicly aimed to have 75% of their code be AI-assisted by mid-2026.
And Snap is already operating at roughly 65%.
Wow. So it's basically a sector-wide arms race to automate the foundational layer of software development.
It is. But where Google's approach becomes uniquely interesting is how they handle the limitations of generic AI models.
Because generic AI can only do so much, right?
Right. So while Gemini Code Assist handles all the standard, boilerplate programming, Google deployed a much more specialized tool internally called Goose.
Goose. Okay, and the sources draw a pretty sharp distinction between Gemini and Goose. Goose appears to be specifically designed to solve the legacy code problem, right?
Precisely. I mean, consider the sheer volume of custom architecture and proprietary internal libraries a company like Google builds up over 2 decades.
A mountain of code.
A literal mountain.
Yeah.
And a generic AI, even a really powerful one, it just doesn't know how to navigate that bespoke infrastructure.
So if you ask it to write a function, it'll just guess based on standard practices.
Right. It will hallucinate a standard industry response that doesn't actually work in Google's system. Goose, however, was trained exclusively on Google's own 20-year technical history.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it basically understands the specific Google dialect of writing software.
So it builds like a semantic map of their proprietary system.
Exactly, allowing it to generate code that actually fits perfectly into their existing highly complex machine.
Okay, so that's the writing part.
Yeah.
But to manage the deployment of all that code, they introduced another tool called Cider in May 2026.
Right, Cider.
And the coverage describes Cider as more of a co-pilot for the entire development lifecycle, not just a code generator.
Because writing the initial syntax is often, well, it's the easiest part of software engineering.
Honestly, yeah.
Cider is designed to automate the heavy lifting that comes after. Managing code reviews, running testing protocols, executing complex migrations across servers.
And people are actually using this one.
Oh yeah, the internal adoption metrics show 50% of active users are relying on Cider at least once a week to manage those workflows.
Okay, but this brings up a fundamental tension that I really want to explore with you.
Sure.
If Goose and Gemini are writing 50% of the code, and Cider is handling the testing and the migrations, aren't we just watching a workforce transition from being writers of code to, like, full-time editors of AI output?
That is the defining question of this entire transition.
Because reading and debugging someone else's code, especially machines, that can take fundamentally more cognitive effort than just writing it yourself. We have to question if this actually saves time in the aggregate.
Well, the short answer within the engineering department is that it is causing severe friction, which we will unpack in detail later.
Okay, good.
But to understand the company's broader strategy regarding time saving, you really have to look at how they are automating the entire product lifecycle, like far beyond the engineering department.
Right, they went company-wide.
Management realized that to fundamentally change the speed of the company, they had to mandate AI across every single division.
Which means moving away from just, a grocery list of disjointed apps and building a synchronized ecosystem of tools.
Exactly.
And according to the internal leaks, the first step in that lifecycle automation was securing the company's intellectual property, which they did with a tool codenamed Duckie.
Duckie, yes.
Yes.
Which represents a really crucial mechanism for enterprise AI. It is the internal, highly confidential version of Gemini.
Because the fundamental problem with public large language models is data leakage, right?
Massive problem. If an employee pastes proprietary code or, say, an unreleased product strategy into a public model, just to summarize it, that data can be absorbed into the model's training weights.
Which means it could spit it back out to a competitor.
Exactly. So Duckie operates inside a strict walled garden. It possesses all the company's internal policies, unreleased projects, organizational secrets, but the underlying database is completely locked.
So it physically cannot leak that data to third parties.
Correct. It's completely sealed.
Okay, so securing the data allows them to confidently automate the next phase, which is commercializing the product.
Yes.
This is where tools like the unpublicized RFP tool and Udly come into play. So let's look at Udly first. The sources describe it essentially as a sparring partner for the sales team.
It functions basically as a conversational simulator. So before a sales representative gets on a really high-stakes call with a potential enterprise client, they role-play the scenario with Udly.
And the AI acts as the client.
Right, the AI is programmed to act as a difficult client, throwing complex objections and pricing pushback at the employee.
It's essentially a batting cage for difficult conversations.
I like that, yeah.
But what makes it effective isn't just the simulation part, right? It's the analytical layer on top of it.
Yes, building on that batting cage analogy, the AI isn't just pitching the ball. It's analyzing your swing in real time.
Oh, interesting.
The tool evaluates highly subjective human elements. The representative's tone, their rate of speech, the clarity of their counter-arguments.
That's hard to measure normally.
Exactly. And it maps those subjective qualities into quantifiable performance metrics.
That's wild. And they apply a similar principle of, structuring unstructured data to their Google Cloud division with the RFP tool.
Yeah, the RFP tool is huge for them.
Because requests for proposals are historically these massive, dense documents that drain hundreds of hours from B2B sales teams.
They are essentially a black hole for productivity. So the internal RFP tool automatically ingests the client's complex, completely unstructured requirements, and it maps out a structured, fully drafted initial proposal.
Just like that.
Just like that. Now, human commercial and legal teams still review and finalize the document, of course.
Right. You need a human eye on contracts.
But the AI entirely eliminates the blank page phase of the drafting process.
Okay, so the data is secured, the sales and legal frameworks are automated, the sources show this automation extending heavily into the visualization and creative phases as well, right? Utilizing tools like VO, Flow, and NotebookLM.
The scale of creative automation is staggering, honestly. Internal reports from Google I/O 2026 revealed that 219 keynote slides were generated using AI.
Wow.
Which is roughly 48% of the event's visual content.
Almost half.
Yeah. Furthermore, 80% of their internal product videos are now mocked up using VO and Flow.
So instead of spending all that capital on physical production shoots or, extensive animation just to test an idea.
Exactly. They just generate high-fidelity proofs of concept instantly.
And when they need to synthesize the vast amounts of operational data behind those products, they deploy NotebookLM.
Right.
Which we know is a public tool, but internally they use it to ingest massive internal research documents, turning scattered, siloed information into a single, instantly searchable database.
It's incredibly efficient.
But yet, when you look at Duckie and Udly and Veo, they all kind of pale in comparison to the sheer computational scale of a platform they call Antigravity.
Oh, Antigravity. This is where we move from AI as a reactive tool to AI as a proactive workforce.
Okay, explain that.
This is Google's internal platform for developing and managing autonomous AI agents. We are no longer talking about a chatbot waiting for a prompt from a human.
Right.
We're looking at interconnected teams of digital agents that can actually coordinate to execute complex multi-step tasks end-to-end, working alongside human employees.
And the numbers Sundar Pichai revealed regarding anti-gravity are just difficult to process.
You really are.
The platform jumped from processing 500 billion tokens a day to over 3 trillion tokens a day in just a matter of months.
8 trillion, yeah.
Let's ground that term for the listener really quick, because token is a word thrown around constantly in AI coverage. What exactly is a token here?
Sure. A token is essentially the fundamental building block of how an AI processes language. Think of a token as a piece of a word or a single syllable.
Okay.
So processing 3 trillion tokens every single day is roughly the computational equivalent of reading every book in a massive university library, 1,000 times over in a 24-hour period.
That is mind-boggling.
Antigravity operates like a digital assembly line, where the AI isn't just the worker executing the task, it is also the conveyor belt moving the data and the floor manager coordinating the sequence.
Okay, but that structural metaphor highlights a massive contradiction in the source material.
Which is
If anti-gravity is autonomously processing trillions of tokens, and Goose is flawlessly writing this Google dialect code, why does management have to forcefully mandate the use of these tools through the GRD system?
And that contradiction is the core of the internal friction. I mean, you generally do not have to mandate a tool that organically makes an employee's life easier.
Exactly. Good tools adopt themselves.
Right. Yet, Google has tied AI adoption directly to the GRD system, which is the Google Reviews and Development Annual Performance Review.
So they made it mandatory.
Management has designated AI usage as a core metric for career advancement.
For non-technical teams, the leaks indicate they've even instituted minimum weekly usage quotas.
Yes.
Like, you have to log into these specific systems a certain number of times, or you literally risk being flagged by management.
And the reaction to these mandates has been severe. The internal leaks reveal over 600 employees using an internal social network to actively rebel against the quotas.
Posting complaints and sharing memes that heavily criticize the efficacy of the tools.
Yeah, it's a full-on backlash.
So we need to understand the mechanism of this friction. Is this just, natural human stubbornness to change? Or is there a structural flaw in how these tools are deployed?
What the data actually suggests points back to your earlier realization about engineers becoming editors.
Ah, okay.
The core issue is the fundamental difference between how an AI writes code and how a human writes code. Artificial intelligence generates code probabilistically.
Meaning it's just guessing what comes next.
Yes, it is essentially predicting the next most likely token based on its training data. It does not write logically.
So it can produce something that looks syntactically perfect but is structurally hollow?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
It creates what developers call spaghetti code.
Spaghetti code.
Yeah, scripts that technically function but are convoluted and completely lack a cohesive architectural logic.
That sounds like a nightmare to fix.
It is. So when Gemini Code Assist generates 1,000 lines of code in 5 seconds, a human engineer still has to review it before it can be pushed to Google's live servers. And finding a subtle logic error or, an architectural hallucination in machine-generated code, that requires significantly more cognitive load than simply writing the code logically from scratch.
Because you're reverse engineering an alien thought process.
Exactly. It is akin to searching for a structural plot hole in a 1,000-page manuscript written by an alien entity.
So the tool explicitly designed to accelerate their workflow is actually burying them under a mountain of exhausting review work.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
That cognitive overload absolutely explains why the friction is so palpable. And the leaks note that this pressure is disproportionately affecting senior talent, right?
Right. Consider the expectations placed on a senior developer. Because of their tenure, management expects them to demonstrate a flawless mastery of these cutting-edge platforms.
But the platforms keep changing.
Constantly. The models powering tools like Goose and Cider are updated and altered every few weeks.
So maintaining expertise on tools that constantly shift their underlying behavior becomes like a second full-time job.
It totally does.
But I have to point out a glaring flaw in the data collection here. If a company ties an employee's bonus and performance review to a strict weekly usage quota, the employees are inevitably going to game the system to protect their livelihoods.
Oh, absolutely. It is a classic consequence of metric-driven management. When the metric becomes the goal, it ceases to be a good metric.
Right. If an employee on a marketing team needs 5 AI interactions by Friday afternoon to hit their quota, they might just ask Duckie to summarize an email they already read or ask it for a banana bread recipe.
Just to tick the box.
Just to tick the box. And this raises a critical question about the 3 trillion tokens being processed by Antigravity. Since all these statistics are coming directly from Google, we are basically looking at a corporation grading its own homework.
Which is always problematic.
Right. Are we witnessing 3 trillion tokens of groundbreaking autonomous innovation, or are we looking at 3 trillion tokens of metric hacking and convoluted busywork that humans are now forced to supervise?
And that is the defining tension of the modern AI rollout. The computational output is undeniably real. The systems are doing the work. But the qualitative value of that output is exactly what those 600 internal employees are questioning.
Which brings us to the application for the listener. How do we take this internal drama from a tech giant and translate it into a playbook?
Right.
Because most people listening don't have a $1 trillion market cap, but they are facing the exact same pressure to integrate AI into their workflows.
The scale is different, but the mechanisms of integration are identical. We can distill Google's successes and missteps into 3 core principles.
Okay, let's hear them.
Let's start with the first, the purpose-built principle.
Which is moving away from the generic hammer approach.
Correct. The most common mistake organizations make is purchasing a generic enterprise chatbot subscription and telling your team to simply, use AI for everything.
Which never works well.
It doesn't. Google's success lies in specialization. They use Goose exclusively for legacy code. They use Udly exclusively for subjective conversational analysis. They use the RFP tool strictly for structuring legal documents.
Right.
You must audit your specific workflows, identify the precise bottlenecks, and deploy models that are fine-tuned for those exact tasks.
You cannot expect one algorithmic model to efficiently debug your software and simultaneously train your sales team.
Exactly.
What is the second principle?
The walled garden imperative. This goes back to the architecture of Duckie we talked about earlier. Enterprise-grade data security is not an optional luxury. It is the baseline requirement for AI integration.
Because the risk of data leakage is literally existential to a business.
It is. If your team is feeding proprietary client strategies or internal financial data into an open-source model just to save 10 minutes on formatting a report, you are creating a massive liability.
Huge liability.
Any tool you integrate must have a verifiable walled garden that prevents your localized data from being used to train the provider's external models.
Okay. That leads us to the final and perhaps most crucial lesson, especially considering the rebellion we discussed.
The third principle is cognitive overload management. You must train your workforce before you demand adoption. You cannot simply mandate quotas and expect efficiency.
And Google actually realized this eventually, right? They built an internal university infrastructure they call AI Savvy Google.
Yes. The sources mentioned they partnered directly with DeepMind for this.
Oh, wow.
They deployed specialized courses, like Building with Gemini, designed to teach their staff not just how to prompt the AI, but how to manage its probabilistic outputs.
That makes a lot of sense.
They are actively trying to upskill their workforce to handle the cognitive load of reviewing machine-generated work.
It makes perfect sense when you view it through a practical lens. Mandating AI usage without training is like buying your team a fleet of Formula One cars.
I like this analogy.
You can't just hand them the keys, mandate that they drive at 200 miles an hour to increase efficiency, and then penalize them on their performance review when they inevitably crash into the wall. Right.
You have to invest the time and capital to build the driving school first.
A highly accurate metaphor. The transition to AI is not a software update. It is a fundamental shift in the mechanics of human labor. You are teaching humans how to be managers of AI rather than just users of software.
So let's pull all of these threads together. We started by examining a highly specialized ecosystem designed to automate the entire product lifecycle.
Yes.
From Goose analyzing decades of legacy code, to Duckie securing the intellectual property, to Antigravity scaling autonomous agents, to the tune of 3 trillion tokens a day.
An unprecedented infrastructure of automation built by the pioneers of the technology.
But beneath that polished infrastructure, we found profound human friction. We found the GRAD mandates, the forced quotas, and the 600 engineers fighting back because they are drowning in the cognitive overload of reviewing probabilistic, machine-generated spaghetti code.
The ultimate takeaway is that AI integration is incredibly messy, even for the people who are literally writing the algorithms. The human bottleneck is the hardest part of the system to upgrade.
It is a messy, uncomfortable transition, but it is one that is fundamentally reshaping the definition of modern work.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to ponder as you look at your own workflow today.
Okay.
We spent this entire deep dive discussing how human employees are becoming severely overwhelmed just trying to review the massive volume of work generated by these tools.
Because the speed of the machine is heavily outpacing our human cognitive ability to check its work.
Exactly. But consider the trajectory of platforms like Antigravity. If these autonomous digital agents continue to scale, if they continue to execute complex end-to-end tasks getting faster and more accurate with every trillion tokens they process, how long is it until the AI is simply tasked with reviewing its own code? And if it crosses that threshold, how long until the autonomous system realizes that the human supervisors are the only ones slowing the assembly line down, and the AI starts writing the performance reviews for us?
Something to think about.
Definitely keep that in mind the next time management mandates a new tool.